Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you, Dr. Stott, today. You've talked about the importance of the evangelist teaching the Bible, but how do you balance that up against the need to present stories and images in our preaching?
Well, Karl, let me begin by saying I'm glad you asked the question, because it's a crucial question. I often think of Christian communication in terms of bridge building, that we've got to build bridges between the biblical world and the modern world. And if we don't succeed in doing that, we are rejected as being totally irrelevant. So we must find ways in which the gospel impinges on the life of ordinary men and women outside. How do we do it, you ask? Well, let me give you one example. I think that a good place to begin with somebody is with love, that everybody knows that love is the greatest thing in the world. I've never met anybody who doesn't agree with that, whether they're Christian or whatever they are. Living is loving, and without love we die. But why is love the greatest thing in the world? Now, non-Christian people have no answer to that. When we say, well, it actually is because the God we believe in is love, in his innermost being. And when he created us in his own image, he gave us the capacity to love and to be loved. That's why love is the greatest thing in the world. That's the kind of thing that I would attempt to do today.
The church in the East is growing a great deal, but are you pessimistic or optimistic about the church in the West?
Well, I think all Christians have to be optimists. I don't see pessimism and faith are mutually incompatible. So I believe that God is doing great things in some parts of the world, and there's no reason why he shouldn't in other parts of the world. Mind you, we have a tough job on hand in the West, but I frankly blame the church as much as anything for the secularization of Europe. It goes right back 250 years to the Enlightenment, really, when the deist philosophers made a frontal assault on the church, and the church was feeble enough to give in. And ever since that day, the church has really been marginalized. So we need to accept the intellectual challenges of today and answer the questions that people are asking.
If I can move to a question that's a little more personal, in your own life, after all these years of serving God, what's God teaching you at the moment?
Oh boy. Well, I seek to be teachable all the time, and for that reason I don't think I have any very dramatic thing to tell you that he has suddenly taught me that I haven't learned before, you know, because I do read the Bible every day and read it expectantly and seek to understand it and grow in understanding of it. I think maybe one thing that theologically that I've been realizing more and more is central is the whole idea of a covenant, the covenant God of Israel, and that God has entered into a new covenant with us through Jesus Christ, and that the sacraments are outward and visible signs of this covenant relationship in which God has committed himself and pledged himself to his people. All that area tends to be neglected, I think, in the evangelical churches today.
Staying on that kind of theme, as you look back over all those years of ministry, and if there's any way you could possibly answer this, what's your greatest encouragement and your greatest regret?
Well, I think the greatest encouragement is that people profess to have been blessed by things I've written and even sometimes things I preach. And when people seem genuinely to have been helped, it is a wonderful joy to rejoice with them. Basic Christianity is a good example because it's now in more than 50 languages, and I still get letters regularly from people who've been converted through reading it or been helped in their Christian life. What the opposite is what? How I've been... What would be your greatest regret? Well, you'll be surprised in what I tell you now. It honestly is that I haven't studied enough. I know people think that I have studied a lot, and I've tried to read a lot. But the problems that are facing us in the church today are so profound that I wish I understood them more and that I had read more. I did start some years ago a reading group with about a dozen young professional people whose purpose was to read a different book every month or every other month. And it would be a secular book, not a theological book, but a secular book, especially the cult books that university students are reading, in order to be able to struggle to understand. Because at the end of the evening, we then ask the basic question, how can the gospel relate to people who think like this or live in this kind of culture. I found it enormously profitable.
Thank you for the opportunity for chatting with you. And